The Avengers return to the tower after an epic battle with Ultron and his army of drones. Captain America heads to the gym to bulk up for the next fight. Black Widow heads to the training hall to work on some fighting techniques. Iron Man heads to the lab to work on some upgrades for his armor. Thor heads to the lounge to talk to their newest ally, Falcon, and ask for his aid in the upcoming battle. But Falcon has a request. He must allow his pet, Red Wing, to join the fight. Now, there are no rules specifically for this sort of thing in the Marvel Multiverse RPG. Sure, maybe in a future expansion they could easily do something like this, have an HQ, have allies, have a pet, and yeah, it's mentioned briefly in the core rulebook about having an HQ, and oh, you can go back there and you can work on your equipment or something, and having the narrator run an ally or whatever, and having a pet, and basically them getting a whole new character sheet. But I would much rather them have an actual fleshed out rules for this. So I came up with some ideas, some rules, some homebrew that I'm going to use for my next campaign for how I think allies, pets, and HQs should work. So let's say your player wants an ally to join them on a campaign. Now, in my case, this would be a big help for if you only have one player, because I only have one player in my one Marvel Multiverse RPG campaign. And what I had been doing is having a NPC join him in every arc so far, and that's what I had planned on doing for the future, and I'm going to be implementing these rules for that later on. So say your player wants an ally. Well, what are they going to do? It'll kind of depend on the player. Maybe they have an idea for an ally, or you have a story-driven reason for them needing this ally. I do agree with, I think the narrator should roleplay the ally, because it helps with story stuff and helps them stay in a direction, or if they get lost or they need help with something, you can just, as the ally, give them a little nudge in the right direction. But I think in combat, it'd be better for the player to use the ally. So it's not like you're playing against yourself, and it just feels weird. I don't know. I don't like it. But so basically, these are the rules that I came up with for making an ally. The rank would be one lower than the player. Ability scores you would pick like normal. Origin, you'd pick like normal, but they can only have one, and it's optional. A lot of times you don't really care. Like, you gotta think of it like a team up. When Spider-Man and Deadpool team up, if you don't know anything about Deadpool, you're in a Spider-Man comic, you don't really care about what Deadpool's origin or his occupation is. Maybe you care about his origin, but you don't really care about what he does for a day job. You're like, whatever, they're having a little adventure, and it's all about Spider-Man. He's the main person. This is just somebody coming in for a team up. So also the occupation, you'd only have one max, and it's optional. You wouldn't even have to do it. And then traits, you'd only have traits from your origin or occupation, and tags only from your origin or occupation. Because one big thing I think they want you to make an entire new character for allies. But it's like, if you're the narrator, especially because they want the narrator to do it. I'm already making all of the enemies. I already have so much to do. And I think the player would have more fun making their own ally than me making an ally for them and being like, here's your ally. And in that sense, they're basically like a half character. Like, they don't need to be a full-fledged, all the bells and whistles of a character. So like for powers, I'd probably only give them 4, including ones gained from the origin or occupation, and only from one power set, not including basic powers. And you would ignore all the requirements other than rank. So like, you don't need to waste power slots on like weaker versions of powers. You can just pick the highest version of a power that you want, and then just call it a day. Don't have to worry about everything else. And the other scores you would calculate normally. And then I would say only one ally per player per team. So you have a team of, let's say you have 4 players. Each one has an ally. Well, they can only have one with them at a time. And then that's where the HQ comes in, because the rest of them could be hanging out at the HQ doing stuff. And we'll get into that in a minute. Now, that's only when you're in, like, out in the field, when you're in combat. But in general, I would think you could have more. I have this little table here of just an idea. None of this is play tested. Who knows if it actually work okay. Of your rank, and then a number of allies you can have. As in, if you're a lower rank, you should be able to have more allies because you need more help. And then they would all be lower rank too. So it's not like they makes it overly. And you can only have one in combat. So you'd have one in combat and you'd have like 2 others back at the HQ helping you out in other ways, basically. And then this is an example character sheet I made for an ally. Say Falcon from the example at the beginning. If I was to make Falcon as an ally, he would look something like this. He'd only have a couple powers. I gave him an origin and an occupation, gave him a couple. He has a couple traits and tags from the origin occupation. And that's the thing, he's not there to be a mainliner, big part of the story. He's supposed to just be an ally, a team up, there to assist, to help you out, not to be a main character sort of thing. So that's how I think the ally should work. The ally needs to just be an add-on character to give your player a little bit of help, and it does the fantasy of the team up, the classic Marvel team up. If you only have one player or something, and then you can have a random ally to show up and be like, hey, let's work together, or help you out, or if your player has an idea for something. And it doesn't need to be this whole long thing of making a brand new character, whole character sheet. It just makes things a lot simpler. Now, in the example, the Falcon would want to bring Redwing with him, which is his pet in the, well, pet, I guess, is not necessarily the correct term in the comics, more like his partner, because they have a psychic link, so he can talk to him. And a different example, let's say your player wants to play as Falcon, and then they want Redwing as a pet. Well, I think there should be rules for that too. Instead of just making a whole new character sheet, why do I need to make a whole new character sheet for Redwing? He's a Falcon. And he honestly can't do all that much. Like, he'd basically be there for support and for helping out and stuff. So, like, the rank would depend on the pet. The ability scores you would calculate like normal. No origin, no occupation. Redwing doesn't have a day job. Origin, he's a bird. Traits and tags, you don't need any of that. You know what Redwing is. He's a bird. He's red. He flies. And then powers. I would probably only give them like 3, plus one of the powers like accuracy, brilliance, discipline, mighty, sturdy, uncanny, that raises one of their damage multipliers, or their damage reduction. The other scores we calculate like normal, and then I would probably give them 1 health damage reduction off the bat just to make them a little more durable. And then again, like with the allies, I would say probably only 1 pet per player and 1 pet per team. So if you have 4 players, they all have pets, I would say only let one of them have the pet with them at a time. The others can just hang out at the HQ or something. Because that'd be a lot going on, having 4 pets. So here I made an example character sheet of how I would make Redwing. Just simple. He only has a couple powers. He can fly. And it'd be like with the ally, where you would just give them the strongest version of a power, not worry about any of the requirements except rank. Though I didn't think about that when I made this, and he's rank 1. I don't think you can have flight 2 when you're rank 1, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, so he would be able to fly, obviously. And then I give him like the slow motion dodge, which makes it so he's harder to hit. And then hit and run, where he basically simulates him swooping down, doing an attack, and then flying away. And he can basically do the normal actions like help and whatnot. So that'd be a good thing. Have him just fly above people and just have him go across the field and give people help. He can swoop down and help people. He's not there to be a frontline fighter. He's a Falcon. He's just a regular Falcon who has a psychic connection to the character Falcon, Sam Wilson. And he's just there for support. He doesn't need to be this full-fleshed character that has an origin and an occupation and all these traits and tags that aren't really necessary. It's just a waste of time. This keeps things a lot simpler and neater and faster and less work for everybody. There's just no need for any of that. Now, the other two, the pets and the allies, I'm definitely going to be using in my next campaign with my friend, because it helps facilitate what we're doing. Now, this one, the HQs, probably not going to, because he's not really going to have the opportunity with how the campaign at least should go. It's not going to really be a way to do it. But I still had the idea for it, so let's get into it. The starting rank for your HQ would be 1. And what you do is you basically build rooms as you rank up. And think of it like a video game. Like Midnight Suns is a good example. As you go through, you like level up the Abbey and you get like more rooms and more access to stuff. So here's a chart of different rooms I thought of, and the combat effects and the kind of passive effects and like utilities that they would unlock as you get the rooms. And a little table of how many rooms you get per rank, and then the karma to spend to get to the next rank. So as you unlock rooms, you would spend time in the room to get its effect. And each player can only have the effect of the number of rooms equal to half their rank rounded down. Minimum of 1, of course. In order to change to a different room, you have to go back to the HQ and spend the time required in the room. And of course, none of this is play tested, and I don't know how I just kind of came up with numbers out of thin air. So it could work fine or it could not work at all. And the karma thing, I was trying to think of how a way basically get experience for your HQ, and karma seemed like the best option since it's kind of like you earn karma from doing heroic things. The only thing I could think of, there's probably a better way to do it, but this is what I come up with. That once a month, after they've spent time, the required time in as many rooms as they can, each player can spend up to half their karma, rounded up, towards ranking up the HQ. Now, it does make a big difference then if you have one player or if you have 5 players, they're going to rank up the rooms a lot more. But I kind of feel like that goes along where if you're a team, you're going to have a lot more resources and reputation and renown and stuff to have your HQ get bigger and more, have more stuff. While if you're just by yourself, you don't. And it's going to take longer. So I don't know. So basically the idea is just the HQ would be something to do in between like story arcs. Like the Avengers just defeated Ultron. They go back to the HQ to hang out, relax. That was a crazy battle. And then, like I said, like Captain America, go to the gym in order to get a power boost for the next fight. And like Tony goes to the lab to work on some tech. There'd be some utility you get from the lab, and like he could get a new power or something. And then the idea too, like on the list, there's a garage. And I'm thinking of like the Avengers animated series where Black Widow and Hawkeye had those hover bike things. I'm like, man, that'd be so cool if you could have that. You could get a garage in your HQ and you just have a hover bike in there. So for the next mission, Hawkeye flies into battle on this hover bike thing and he can use range attacks, but then he gets hurt enough, it could get destroyed, then he like falls off of it, and now he's on the ground, and there's a lot of possibility to it. Now, as I said at the beginning, they could add rules for this and some future expansion. I would love for them to do that. That would be awesome. And I would totally change over to whatever they did, as long as I like it as much or better than, what I came up with, which is kind of just a whatever stuff. We'll see. Hopefully I'll be able to play test it with my friend eventually. See how it worked. If you want to hear about the setup for that campaign and how the session 0 went, click here. If you won't want to miss out on any future videos, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.